Let's take a couple minutes and compare the factors of these polynomials with the graph of the function of those polynomials. In example 2, we found that x plus 3 is a factor of x to the fourth minus 81. And we also showed how to complete the factors. And notice that if you graph y equals, or f of x equals x to the fourth minus 81, we found that x plus 3 is a factor, and x minus 3 is a factor, as well as x squared plus 9 is a factor. Now, these two linear factors correspond to the intercepts of your function. In fact, when you check to see if x plus 3 is a factor using synthetic division, you put a -3 in the box. So -3, 0, you end up with a remainder of 0 using synthetic division. That corresponds to where that graph crosses through the x-axis. And for x minus 3 equals a factor, it corresponds to another x-intercept of x minus 3 is a factor. So 3, 0 is an x-intercept. So there's a nice relationship between the factors of a polynomial, the results of synthetic division, the degree of the polynomial. Let's look at example 3. In example 3, we found that x minus 2 was a factor, and we continued the factorization and found that x plus 2 was also a factor, which was repeated. And if you look at the graph of that polynomial, you can see these factors correspond to where the graph crosses through the x-axis. So again, we found that x minus 2, x plus 2. So with synthetic division, when we put a -2 in the box, that corresponds to the factor x plus 2, and over here corresponds to the factor x minus 2. Oops. In fact, that factor is repeated twice. Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized I made a mistake on that. So I'm glad I got a chance to correct it here. This should have been -2. So I apologize for that mistake. All right. So you were probably thinking when you watched the last video that I made a mistake, but so now I'm glad I checked and compared with the graph, so I was able to see my mistake. And now let's look at example 4. 4x to the third minus 5x squared minus 23x plus 6. We found the three factors. The first factor we found using synthetic division of x plus 2. That corresponds to this point on the graph where, let's use purple. This corresponds to the factor x plus 2, where that equals 0. That's where the graph is going to cross through the x-axis. We also found x minus 3 to be a factor, and that is going to tell you that your graph is going to go through the x-axis at x equals +3. And the graph is crossing right here, and that crosses at 1/4. So this corresponds to 4x minus 1 being a factor of the polynomial. This is a third-degree polynomial. That means it could have 3 linear factors. The graph could go in 1, 2, 3 directions. The graph can cross through the x-axis in 1, 2, 3 different places.